It was 500 milligrams of testosterone. It was 3 amps of parabolon, which was around 210 maybe milligrams.
Wait, are we talking per day?
No, just let me continue. So
Okay.
500 mgs of test.
Yep.
3 amps of parabolon, 210 mgs, 100 mgs of anadrol, and 100 mgs of Dbol per day.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Think Big Bodybuilding Media. I'm Scott McNally, and we are back again. By popular demand, everybody's been asking, when's going to be the next episode with Kuba Cielen? What's going on, brother?
We're back with a bang. Let's get it. We've got a great topic to cover, and we actually have some amazing questions. So I'm actually really excited for today's episode because it's going to be a lot of value and a lot of fun. Because in between of the topic of today's conversation, we do have to cover the big cycles, right? So we are going to cover the craziest cycles that you've come across. And I am going to share one of the craziest cycles that I have had given by one of top Olympian coaches. Okay. So I'm definitely looking forward to sharing to that. But if you want to hear that, you're going to have to stay along for the ride. And you're going to have to comment below and support the channel. So let's get it.
Good call. That was a great salesmanship there, Kuba. I really like that. So what are we going to start with here? I know you made a post not too long ago. Basically, the topic was training for fun or training to grow muscle. And I got to tell you, man, I always think back to an episode I did with Scott Stevenson. And you know, Scott, he doesn't sugarcoat things, but he's also not trying to be like a hard ass or anything like that.
Of course.
Somebody said, I really enjoy going to the gym every day. And it was a live comment. So Scott looked at it and he said, you know, I see by your profile picture, you know, and I don't mean this as an insult, you don't look like you lift weights. Like if we just met on the street and you told me that you didn't lift weights, or you told me you lift weights, you know, I believe you didn't, you know. So maybe you just enjoy lifting weights for fun. And if that's what your goal is to go to the gym and just lift weights for fun because you enjoy that, then I say more power to you, train every day. But if you want to grow muscle, you might want to think about doing it a little bit differently. And he completely leveled the guy without intentionally meaning to, you know?
I mean, that would have been murder. Imagine that someone said, you don't even train like... But I know Scott, and I know he did not mean no malice with what he said.
Yeah.
Now, look, everyone's perception of fun is very different. Look, we can agree on that, right?
Absolutely.
Now, if I was to go in the gym and just train for fun, my training would look completely different to what it does right now.
Yeah.
Now, I will get into some nuanced stuff, and I will get into how I kind of overcome the training for fun versus building muscle and how I kind of get a middle ground. But you have to understand that building muscle is going to take you doing something that you particularly do not like. Whether it means taking rest when you don't want to rest, or whether it means simply having self-control within the amount of work that you do in that given session. Now, bodybuilding is very much a discipline that's all about self-control. You need to have self-control in the gym. You need to have self-control with your schedule, with your meals. With everything you do, it requires a degree of self-control and discipline, right? Now, when it comes to training, for me personally, training for fun would be going to the gym, maxing out on every single machine, trying to lift all the weight that I can lift with drop sets, with supersets, trying to basically murder myself. Now, I did that for a couple of years of my training, and I made very, very little progress. It was fun. I loved it. But we killed ourselves every single time we trained. It led to very little results when it came to building muscle or even developing any strength because we was constantly battered.
Yeah.
Now, if I was just to do it for fun and just for the love of it, I would be in the gym every single day. And I would be lifting very differently. It would probably cause me some injuries, and I would probably end up wrecked like I was back then. But fact of the matter is, you need to scale things back if you want to actually grow muscle, unfortunately. It's the boring repetitiveness that leads to the greatest results. Sadly, it really does. And unfortunately, for me, as an example, it means doing much less within the sessions. My current volume, for example, 13 sets on push days, 15 sets on pull days, and 11 sets on leg days. That's my current volume.
Okay.
And I'm making great progress on that. In comparison to what I've done before, and in comparison to what I would like to do, it's completely worlds apart.
Yeah.
So, if you are not seeing the progress that you necessarily work for, there has to be something that you need to fix. It's either your training or nutrition, or potentially you might just be a hard gainer. It might just take you more time. But fact of the matter is, Scott, there will come a time in someone's training career where training a certain way will only take them so far.
Yeah.
Then unfortunately, you will need to step up. You will need to dial things in. So as you progress, the more you progress, the more advanced you get, the more dialed in you have to get to keep progressing.
Sure.
This is why you see a lot of guys that are so talented and that are so gifted. They get to a certain point and then you just see standstill. Because at that point, they refuse to actually learn more and they refuse to actually do what they need to do rather than what they want to do.
Yeah.
So, I do have a little bit of a rule when it comes to coaching, when it comes to trying to have that middle ground, and even with myself, where it used to be a 90-10 rule where 90% of the work is the work that I have to do. 10% of the work is the fun stuff that won't necessarily benefit me or have the greatest return on investment.
Okay.
Right now, it probably looks more like 99-1 because I have learned to lean into getting enjoyment out of doing the stuff that's required of me.
Yeah.
Because for me, that drive is more so revolving on progression, right? And what I can do to make more progress, I want to do and I'm willing to do. Right? And
Yeah,
I'm
that
willing
makes
to
sense.
put my bias to the side to be able to do that. But generally, I think to meet a middle ground, especially if you have clients that are not professional bodybuilders, they're not trying to really reach their true potential completely. They're not, they're not at that level. You've got to have that rule of 90-10 or even 80-20 just to make them happy.
Yeah.
And depending on what happiness is and what concept of happiness is for some people, right? Some people, they might just want to say like, right, I just want the results. Tell me exactly what I want to do.
Yeah.
That's fine. Then you completely disregard that rule and you give them exactly what they need to do. So, what is the difference? The difference is simply making sure that you are doing the training that you can recover from and progress with over time. No matter what your training style is, whether it's high volume, low volume, high intensity, low intensity, I don't care. Reps in reserve, whatever it is, there has to be a degree of progression.
Yeah.
If there is not a degree of progression, you are probably not making any progress. Do you follow?
Yeah, agree 100%, man. In fact, Scott Stevenson had said the one common thread in every training study that there's ever been is the fact that in some way or another there's a progression happening.
Yeah. And listen, this is not just me talking bro science. As I've just said, this is literally backed by studies. There has to be a way to progress. And to me, in my personal experience, when I just did stuff for fun, the progress just wasn't anywhere near close to what it is now.
Yeah.
I trained too hard. And I mean, Scott, every set was a widowmaker,
Right.
with probably drop sets and beyond. So it wasn't just taking sets to failure. It was a widowmaker with forced reps and occasional drop sets. Like,
Yeah.
mate, when you're doing 12 working sets, 13, 14 working sets per session, and every set is taken there like this, you're not recovering. Doesn't matter what food you eat or what drugs you take.
Yeah.
I do not believe you can recover from that physically.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
It's just not possible, man.
100%.
But mate, the amount of fun I've had was just ridiculous. So, look, the clear differences between people that do it for fun and people that actually do it for results is having a clear vision, a clear goal, and a clear plan. The people that go in the gym for fun, they often have no idea what they're going to do. They just turn up and do stuff. When you turn up and do stuff at random, you've got no ways of tracking your progression. If you have no ways of tracking your progression, it will be much harder to actually see progress within your lifts because you're probably doing random exercises every single time you come in the gym, different training structure, different styles of training, and trying to kind of like mishmash it all together. And look, all of the training styles work if you actually stick to one of them.
Right.
But if you try and combine them all at once, guess what? You're probably not going to get much results.
Yeah.
So you need to have a clear vision, you need to have a clear goal, and you need to have a plan.
I feel like a lot of our people, they do have a set plan.
Yeah.
You know, they'll have a set split. I do, you know, this particular split. Every Monday I train this or whatever. But then it's getting into that workout, I think, where things don't align with actually growing, you know, because you can still just have a lot of fun doing whatever split you set up and not progress. You know, it takes effort to track things. I think that, you know, it does. Like, I've met a lot of people who tell me, and I've been there myself, like, I just don't want to track this. It makes it less fun. But ultimately, yeah, I think there's something to be said, Kuba, about, you said that you feel like after a while you figured out how to enjoy the things that it takes to grow. Isn't the things that it takes to grow and reaching your goals, isn't that really ultimately the most rewarding? That's the most fun to me, you know?
It absolutely is. I mean, come on. Like, why would you want to go in the gym and not see progress? That's no idea fun to me. That's hell. And look, I love training, and you know, I love training hard. But after a while, when I didn't see progress, I needed to have a good think and kind of have a word with myself. I was like, right, what do I need to do now to actually make progress? I need to scale back. It's as simple as that. Now, I completely get the idea that people say, oh, you know, logging takes the fun out of my training, but it's like, does it? Have you tried it? Because these are also the people that haven't actually tried logging effectively. What these people generally do is they'll start logging the sessions. They will want to take massive progressions in the logbook, and that just never happens, Scott, as you know yourself. Even when you first start on cycle, right? Like, you will see bigger jumps in progression, but it's still nothing really significant. Like, you won't see a 20-pound jump on the bar every single week. But unfortunately, when people don't understand logging, they try to take these big jumps in progression. Yeah. And then what happens? They have to change their execution, their range of motion shortens, the joints start to hurt because they're trying to lift the loads that are above and beyond the means. So then the idea of fun starts to diminish because they're not actually seeing the progress they're looking for.
Yeah.
So I completely understand that concept, right? But 9 times out of 10, it's not the logging itself. It's more so inaccurate way of logging the workouts that leads to lack of enjoyment.
I could see that. Yeah, because then you end up disappointed when you aren't getting what you want out of it.
Absolutely. Now, some of the athletes that I've worked with in the past, and a huge thing that I've had to learn was scaling back on my training intensity. And this is me not saying training with reps in reserve. This is me saying not training above and beyond failure for every single set. Because in past, what I would do is I would take my set to failure, I would fail, but then I would continue with either partials or cheat reps. Now, and you will have noticed this yourself, I can guarantee that, and let me know your thoughts on this, but as you get bigger and stronger, the cheat reps, in my opinion, they have no merit, they have no more value. All they will actually do, especially the cheat reps that you do on bigger compound lifts, they will more than likely drive much more fatigue with very little reward when it comes to quality stimulus.
And you can't track it. You know, I got 8 reps plus I got 3/4 rep, 3/4 rep, half rep. You know, how do you track that? You know?
Well, the problem is, Scott, people do track that as reps. Then what happens is the next week comes around and they try to beat that. So what happens then? It's impossible to beat those kind of reps. And that's the mistake that I used to make with logging. And that was like, 6-7 years ago. You know, I used to log these reps, and then next week I would try and beat that when I was already training 3-4 reps past failure. It's just not possible to have that sort of progression week to week. Even if you're Ronnie Coleman, like, it's just not happening.
I've found, I've seen it a number of times, Kuba, and guys that I work with where they're doing this. That's one of the first things I try to get them to stop doing. And what I've told them is that when you feel like you're not going to be able to get another one,
stop.
Like, don't. Well, stop. Or this, like maybe you're doing a pull down, Go back up to the top, get that nice stretch, good stretch at the top, and go for one more. Like, give it all you've got. Give it one more and see if you can get it. If you don't get it, you're done. And ultimately, I think that that's how we can really start digging in to build more intensity, is because we're learning to harness it all at the end of the set where needed, you know?
Also, another variable as well to understand and watch out for, and I bet you've actually seen that with that guy that you've probably taught that, is that when the sets get hard, people do everything in their power to then continue and make the lift easier. So what happens then is the set probably started perfect and he was doing great reps. You know, it doesn't have to be pink dumbbell execution, but his reps were standardized. Each rep looked the same. If you have to change your position, change your range of motion or execution in any way, shape or form to continue getting more reps because you are unable to do another rep without changing it, guess what? You're done.
Yeah.
The set is over. Any more reps past that have no merit. And for me personally, that has been my biggest downfall in past when it came to seeing meaningful progression week to week. And being able to harness that, and rewinding back to what I mentioned about self-control earlier, having that self-control has been a game changer in training. It really has. And funnily enough, having that self-control with my decision making, having that self-control with my reactions in everything I do has definitely paid off dividends. So self-control now, man, it's a game changer, not just for training, but almost anything in life. And like even looking back, even looking back, and the reason why it was such a, you know, big moment for me, like when I realized that applying the same self-control that I had in my training and stopping the reps at a perfect time when I've actually reached failure, applying that in situations where I would normally react emotionally and controlling myself a little bit more has resulted in me putting myself into much better situations in almost everything I did. So as you can imagine, I tidied up my training, but I also got my shit together with the self-control, practicing it both in and outside of the gym. So that's just another little benefit for you guys to kind of use.
Little sage wisdom, little Kuba logbook sage wisdom going on here.
It's true though. It's true. You know it. It's true.
100%.
Mate, think about this, right? How many times in a week you have to stop yourself either doing something or saying something that would potentially put you in a bit of a negative place? It's probably very
especially
often.
If you're on social media, it'd be so easy to just say just give it 5 minutes, come back to it.
Yep. And then you don't say it, and guess what? You've won.
Yeah.
But if you had said it, you lost. So you've got to think of the same with the training, right? Every single time you take that rep that wasn't there, you are taking away from your progression. Because guess what? Every time you go past failure, each time the next session comes around, you are likely slightly under-recovered going into it. So guess what? You won't see the progression again because you probably blew your load the previous session trying to get those reps that wasn't there. And it's actually a conversation that Jordan had with me in past when he was talking about his press work and chest pressing. And he said to me, like, look, I don't take any 50-50 reps from my chest pressing. So his last rep is still like, back then especially, was still pretty perfect. And I was like, on paper, this almost looks like you're keeping reps in a tank, but I know he wasn't.
Right.
He just wasn't taking reps that are simply not there. That he's not capable of completing without changing the execution, right? And when I implemented that, the progress that I was able to see weekly was fucking huge. And again, that was just an eureka moment. And applying that to all of my sessions, not only I was able to recover session to session, but I was able to either take an additional rep or a low progression in almost all of my sets. Whereas in comparison, it'd be, a progression here and there within a set. then I'd, try and do the shit reps, log them, try and progress that again, and it'd just be a vicious circle of going into the sessions, under-recovered, making mediocre progress, right?
Yeah, with how often I'm seeing this, I feel like this point is probably going to reach a lot of people. I feel like, in fact, I'm going to say, guys, if you're one of those guys, no shame in it, but if that's what you've been doing, please comment and tell me that you're going to change it, and then follow up and let us know down the road in a future episode how that's going, because I really do believe that this in itself can be a legitimate big impactor on your level of intensity.
It's not just that, but the level of progression that you will see will be huge. Now,
sure.
I want to finish this topic on this little bit now. In order for this to work in the real world and in practice, I truly believe you have to learn how to truly take the sets there and past failure. So you need to experience the hard sets, the sets past failure, the forced reps, to be able to understand when that true failure point is. Because on the other hand, and I'm not sure what your take on it is, and you can tell us after, I have seen so many people just stop reps when they are nowhere near that point, where I know they probably had 3-4 more clean reps, but the reason why they're stopping them reps is because they're getting uncomfortable.
Right.
It's starting to hurt. It's starting to get a little bit nippy, especially when you see the hack squat sets or the leg press sets or even leg extensions. Like, you can see it's getting harder, and then it's almost like they either stop or they do a couple of reps with like fake hard reps, and you can see the fake hard reps because the load's like slowing down, but they finish it super easy and come back down. And I'm like, yeah, I've seen that before, bro, but you've had a lot more in the tank. So do not cheat them reps and take it all the way. So I do think there's merit in, and look, there's a lot of clients that will implement this with, and you can probably vouch for this, but there's still a lot of people that you probably wouldn't turn around and say, actually, you need to scale back on that sort of intensity. Because I still have a lot of guys and girls that I wouldn't necessarily tell them, you need to pull back here. But on the other hand, I've got guys and girls that are still going to the gym, and it's like a suicide mission when I'm like, Jesus Christ, if you don't pull this back, you're gonna put yourself in the ground,
Yeah. No, I'm with you 100% on that, man. You do have to figure out what that level of intensity is. Like, we've talked about it before, and it's just bodybuilding, where Ron and Dusty have talked about how, like, is a Widowmaker set really going to be the best thing for growing muscle?
It's going to be fun. It's going to
be fun, and you're going to learn something from it too, because it's always in those sets that we really realize what we truly were capable of,
Come on, let's go, yeah. Do you know what? That's the fun sets, right? But it's not necessarily the sets that lead to the greatest of results. And look, we could also have the argument, and someone actually asked me this, well, why don't you just lower your volume down and do more of these sets? Because in my opinion, I think scaling back of the volume, it still would not lead to the same growth as it would just doing clean sets. So in my opinion, right, their point was basically, instead of doing 2 clean sets, why don't you just do 1 set that's like past failure with the Widowmakers, etc. It's like, well, the stimulus that you actually get from 2 clean sets is probably greater.
Yeah.
And you probably feel less smashed off back of those 2 sets than you would of 1 crazy Widowmaker set.
Yeah, the way you're talking about it is this is hard training. Like, I would love to see a demo, because I'm sure everybody who's watching right now also follows you on Instagram. They follow your YouTube. They see what your training looks like. So it's not like things got a little tough and then you locked out and, racked it. This is still extremely difficult. But at the same time, what I discovered in training like this is that my knees didn't bother me the same way. I didn't have issues the way I would in the past, man. Because there was a time, Kuba, I spent like 10 years with my elbows hurting and my knees hurting. You know what I mean?
I'm going to send you over the clip that you can probably pull up.
All right, cool.
And that was probably like 1 rep more. I would probably need to take Right. It's a long set, so you might want to kind of skip towards the end.
Do you have it on Instagram or anything?
I actually have it on WhatsApp. Can I do it on WhatsApp?
You know what? With this program, if I drag it in here, it's gonna boot us off. I'm not sure how to do it, but I'll tell you what. I can drop it in post production though.
Right. What I will do is anyway, I'll send you the video over, and you can pull it up. But when you look at the last couple of reps, like even before the last rep that I do,
yeah,
I still have to take a little bit of a pause to reset and rebrace. So the last rep, although on paper, it probably looks like I maybe could have squeezed another rep out.
Yeah.
But with how it felt, and especially the speed on that leg press of that concentric, and how I felt internally, I know that if I attempted another rep, I would probably need to rest for longer to be able to get it, or Mark would have had to give me a push to continue. So it's a trade-off, but the only reason why I am able to recognize that is I do have the self-awareness of what it actually feels like to do a rep that isn't there.
Yeah.
So there is also merit to learning to train to that place, and then once you learn to train with that sort of intensity where you're killing yourself,
yeah,
that's when you also need to apply that self-control whilst maintaining the same intensity.
Yeah, well, the way I see it too, Kuba, is you're not telling people to stop. You'll still know when failure is, because you go for that last, say, once again, I'm thinking about that pull down.
Yep.
You go for that last rep, and it just doesn't go, and that's when you cut it versus trying to now repeat that 5 more times halfway,
Yeah, absolutely. There's probably some back clips that you can pull through as well. From the pull session that I've just posted as well, you can probably pull some of those up, and
cool.
People can probably see an example. But that's pretty much the difference between training for fun versus training to actually build muscle. Have you got anything to add?
No, man, I think that was fantastic, and I'm chomping at the bit to get into this diet topic too, because I'm right there with you, and I know that you started your prep now. And how are we gonna couch this, or excuse me, how are we gonna seat this particular conversation?
So, I have started prep, and I'm very much excited. Very much excited. I've just started prep on Saturday, so I think we'll probably do an in-depth episode on how to start a prep, or what calorific adjustments to make, what to do with your cardio, what to do with your drugs, what to do everything. How to basically start prep on a diet phase, and what you need to do beforehand as well. So what we could actually cover is a complete timeline, but I'm actually 4 days into the diet, and I'm peeled already, believe it or not. I'm not actually, but it's already moving pretty well. Initially, I always want to start a little bit harder, and I do feel like I always drop a little bit of gut weight and that inflammation just from lower food. So it's definitely moving forward pretty well. But the question that I had for you, because I know that you're like 27 pounds down already.
Yes.
So, how are you finding SLU?
Oh, dude. So, I'm finding it to be fantastic. Like, it's been an absolute game changer for me. I've got a unique situation, though. We've kind of determined that I probably have some pretty serious mitochondrial dysfunction after I got sick in 2021. I got the long bug, and it really had affected me in every way. So, for instance, like, I might be in a good groove, things are going well, I'm making progress. Then we go to the Arnold Classic. I'm up for like 4 days straight, basically, and it's just so much activity. After that, usually it takes like a day of a little bit, downtime, and then you bounce back. I'd find I wouldn't bounce back. I would just be in a hole, and my appetite would go. My ability to train would go. My motivation would go. Like, I'm talking from doing really good to now at like, can't really do much. A lot of brain fog. So with SLU, I'm not getting those dips now. So for me,
just constant.
Yeah, it's just after the Arnold, I had a day where I needed to rest, but after that, I got right back on track. And within a week, I was doing what I needed to do, but then pushing back at 100% within a week. So I'd say that in itself has been the biggest game changer for me. But just the cognitive boost that I get from it has helped dramatically in my motivation to say, be aggressive, get my work done, schedule the time in for my cardio, make sure that all my meals are prepped. And all those things, as you get those going, they start feeding into it. Then you start seeing the progress and it, that fire catches. So it's definitely helped with that for me.
What have you noticed in terms of results? So what have you actually done with your food? And how has it affected your training performance? Have you felt any difference with training performance and muscle retention? What have you actually noticed when it comes to not just fat loss? Because I assume fat loss has been much easier with it in, right?
And so interestingly, I'll tell you what, the number one thing I noticed is improved cardio endurance. So that's going to be both on the treadmill doing cardio, and it's going to be within a working set. That I'm finding that I can withstand a lot more. And that was a struggle for me previously. So that has really opened me up. When I first started it, my diet was, I'm on track with the diet. I just shifted everything to make sure I'm eating clean, eating 5 times a day. And I started seeing a recomping effect. I started seeing when I added the SLU in, so the scales going down a little bit. I added the SLU in, the scales stopped going down, and I continued to improve compositionally without any scale change. Eventually, I pushed the diet hard, and I decided, sometimes, Kuba, you can take somebody and you remove a cup of rice and you start and add 20 minutes of cardio, and they start moving. For me, with where I'm at and where I'd been stuck for about 4 years, I figured I think I need to push harder to get things moving. So I went all the way down to protein only, 5 meals a day, and 1 serving of carbs. And out the gate, man, I was starving, right? But I instantly started seeing the scale just start radically moving at that point. And I got to the point where I could start adding more food back in. So it's like, once you get that fire started, you can throw a couple more sticks on and they just get incinerated, So now I'm able to eat carbs 3 to 4 times a day. I will cycle them lower on non-training days. And I also, I've intuitively been cycling them lower. Like I want to push for a little bit more scale loss by Friday before I do a reload. And I'll, maybe say, I'm going to skip the carbs in this particular meal because I know that I'll wake up lighter tomorrow if I do, that type of thing.
And you haven't made any changes to any other super subs, right? You've just
I added in 20 T3 now too. So
no androgens, no nothing really.
Okay, well, 27 pounds, no, but as of now I have. We maybe added. I haven't been on cycling in a long time. I ran a little bit of Dbol for a while back. If things go as planned, I got to get my labs done. I want to make sure that my hematocrit's in order. Also, too, I want to see if I get any cholesterol improvement from SLU. My cholesterol is pretty good, but I've been hearing people getting benefits, so I'm excited. I'm going in tomorrow morning to get labs, but I maybe preemptively already started a couple days ago. So if things are looking the way I want, I'm looking at something like 800 test, 600 EQ.
Oh, very nice. That will be perfect. Now, what about training performance? How's it affected your training performance at all?
I'll tell you what, man. I haven't seen any kind of dip. Put it this way, my food is obviously like lower, harder, more depleted than I had been in a long time, and my training's only getting better. But do keep in mind too, I'm not where you're at. Of course. I was a competitor for years and years, and I maintained that level of training. But after I got sick, man, there were periods of time that I couldn't train. So getting back to where I am now, it took a lot of humility to say, like, listen, I'm not logbooking like you are right now. Yeah. Like, put it this way, I'm doing for a chest day. I'm doing a 1 body part split. That's working well for me right now. I can recover from it. And my last exercise is literally push-ups. As many sets, as many reps as I can get for 3 sets. So I do 2 chest exercises. Third exercise is 3 sets of push-ups using perfect form, keeping my core real tight. And it's just a good way that I can push myself further. But that's because, man, if I was on the 20th, you might be on the 40th story right now. I was at maybe the 25th story, something like that. I'm back down to the ground floor. You know what I'm saying?
I get you. Now, with your cycle, are you going to titrate up, or will you just go straight in at that dose?
I'm just going to go straight in at that dose. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see a reason not to. I figure with knowing my body, knowing how I've experienced things before, EQ really starts to come into its own later in the cycle. So there's no reason for me to titrate up. I'll just run it as this, and it's just an experiment. Could you say it's a heavier cycle for someone that's not, doing anything extreme? Yeah, you could say that, but I'm also a guy who's done a lot of gear in my day, so I'd say for me this is a hefty cycle for where I stand now. But we'll see. Just because I said that's what I'm going to do doesn't mean that's the way it's going to carry out either. I may pull it back some. I mean,
listen, talking of a lot of gear, that's literally a drop in the ocean with a cycle that I had got sent. So, and I'll tell you what I'm using at the moment in a little bit. But
okay,
I want to touch on one of the biggest cycles that I've ever had prescribed.
All right,
shall we say?
All right.
So it was 500 milligrams of testosterone. It was 3 amps of parabolon, which was around 210 maybe milligrams.
Wait, are we talking per day?
No, just let me continue. So
okay.
500 mgs of test.
Yep.
3 amps of parabolon, 210 mgs, 100 mgs of anadrol, and 100 mgs of Dbol per day. Oof. And that was at 18 weeks out from the show. No, sorry, my mistake. That was 16 weeks out from the show.
Oh, that's completely different than 18. Never mind. No.
16.
I thought it was crazy talk at first there.
Yeah. 16 weeks out from the show. So let's say it was 720 times 7. That's 5 grams off the bat per week at 16 weeks out. So, safe to say, I did not do that cycle because I definitely thought to myself, if I actually do that cycle, I will likely not finish the prep and end up in jail. So it's probably not a good idea that I do that because anadrol and parabolon at the same time, at that dose daily, it's probably going to be a little bit too much for me to handle mentally, especially back then when I was 21, I think I was back then.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I was 21. That was my prep for the British, the actual British that held some value, and that was the year that Hollins had actually won his pro card.
Oh, I remember that.
I was actually in the overall of him. I won the heavyweights. He won the super heavies.
You're kidding? No kidding.
Yeah, and I won the juniors that day as well.
Okay. Wow.
So
that was like 1,500 milligrams of tren. That's insane, man.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I'll be honest though. I have done some heavy trend cycles in past, but I've never done 1,400. I've never done 1,400. I've done. I think max trend I've done was either 700 or potentially 1,000. And do you know what? It just made me feel like shit. I couldn't eat, and it made me feel like shit.
I pushed it to 700. Yeah, and I didn't have it. Yeah.
There was a time period when everyone did 100 mgs of tren a day. I feel like.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I started with less. I started with 50 every other day, but over time through the cycle, I increased it going into the show. Yeah. And by the time I got to it, honestly, Kuba, I couldn't really tell the difference. Like I didn't feel terrible on it, didn't feel great on it, but I definitely feel like, man, you're a light heavyweight, at a state level show. Maybe you don't need to be doing all of this,
I'll be honest, in the past 2 years, my tren use personally and with clients has definitely been less and less. Yeah. I personally don't go above 200 milligrams now. I don't see the need. Yeah. I really think 200 gives me everything that I need. And with a number of clients now, I don't actually tren with them because I've actually seen much better results in prep without using tren because their sleep's better, their mood's better.
That's huge. Yeah.
And listen, if someone's mood is better, if someone sleeps better, the results are better.
They're going to look better,
Yeah, one of my clients, Dara, you can probably search him on Instagram, Dara McNamara. He's actually tagged me in like a transformation from when we first started working together to recent. But anyway, long story short, he's around 10 kilo up now. Probably 10 kilo up. And I would probably say conditions comparable. And he's not using any tren. And for him, it's been a game changer. It really has. Like, his muscle retention's better, his performance is better. We're actually using less overall drugs this year, and
Wow.
he's like 101 kilo in comparison to when he was like 91 kilo. So you can imagine, like, the difference is huge. So look, when it comes to drugs and when it comes to all these numbers, I think people get a massive hard on when it comes to anabolics and when it comes to crazy cycles, right? But let me tell you now, Scott, the past 2 years, my gear use and my overall cycles have been getting less and less, and I've been seeing more and more results.
Yeah. I believe
Especially
you.
even in prep.
Now,
So
I know there will be people who don't believe you, but let me just throw something in really quick because I'm thinking people are going to wonder this. So you're a big dude. Do you feel like you're able to cut back now because he's already big, so he doesn't need as much? Is it one of those things, or what do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think there's a definitely a bit of a U curve with gear, where yes, more does more to a degree, and I think once you get to that certain point for your own tolerance, and unfortunately, this is where I know some guys and girls that can tolerate a fucking boatload of gear, and they don't get that, negative return. But some guys really do. So, for me personally, I think there's a sweet spot at which you will grow the most.
Yeah.
For me personally, it's between 2 up to closer towards 3,000 milligrams. But the line of 2,000 and 3,000, I feel like, is the sweet spot.
Okay.
I feel like that's the best when it comes to return on investment for doing what you're doing, and the results not really feeling like your sleep suffers or appetite suffers. But again, that's making up, and again, one important caveat, right? That total milligram is only made up from test primo and mast.
Okay. Wow.
Because I do feel like certain compounds vary milligram to milligram. Not
for
in
sure.
Not in the effects that you necessarily get when it comes to building muscle, but what effects they can actually cause when it comes to the stress on your body.
Oh,
and again,
yeah.
look, certain compounds for some people, they might feel fantastic. Like, I know you get on with EQ so well. Personally, I take 500 ml of EQ. 1, I get nothing from it, but 2, it's the only compound that really makes me feel like really depressed and down and anxious.
Ooh.
Same
Yeah,
with
so I would never
Trestolone.
want you to run that then,
Yeah, same with Trestolone. And do you know what? I don't feel like I get anything from it. I feel like I'm just putting it in and it just does nothing. So for me, it's definitely off the table.
Trest as well, huh?
Trestolone, mate. That's, oh, Jesus Christ. When I tried that, that was horrendous. Yeah,
I loved it too, man. That was even better for me.
Do you know what, though? I think the only time where I think I would get benefits from it would be in prep.
Yeah. Yeah, I can
When
see
you're
that.
like super lean, and even then at very low dose. But even right now, like the cycles, the start point at 24 weeks out is 500 test, 1,000 primo. That's it.
Okay. What does your estrogen do with a dose like that?
See, it depends, because I know at the moment, and I've just had my blood work done off the back of my bridge, which was much lower than that. And I'm going to see where it lands. But generally, my estrogen is actually just above the range on this cycle.
Okay.
The primo does lower it, but even right now, because I've only just started, like, my estrogen's still pretty high at the moment, because in my bridge I mostly did test with a little bit of primo.
Got you.
And again, I'm not gonna say TRT plus, because it wasn't TRT plus. But anyway, it's mostly above the range. But again, with estrogen, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you should let it run wild. I think it should still be under control. So for me, I do take my blood work every 6 weeks with Eval. Dave, massive shout out. You probably know, but with Dave, I literally have my blood work from Dave from the day he started Eval every 6 to 10 weeks since he started.
He told me that you are impeccable with your labs and that you are super on top of that stuff. That's great, man.
Yeah.
It's a good
Listen,
example too.
We're very, very lucky to have him, because like the day he set that company up, I messaged him and I was like, Dave, I want to pay up front. I want to pay for like 5 tests and I want them done every 6 weeks. He was like, great. And you know what? His service was that good. I was more than willing and more than happy to keep paying until Dave was in a position where he was able to sponsor me. But I was one of his very first clients. I'm not sure if he's told you. But anyway, that's off the topic. Estrogen-wise, I do like to keep it somewhat above the range, especially in the off-season. But then in prep, I do prefer to actually keep my testosterone a little bit lower rather than escalating testosterone. So from here now, I will probably pull my tests down eventually rather than bringing it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting.
Sure. It's just this way.
I'm with you too. I'm like, I don't mind estrogen running high, but especially in prep, like I'm not gonna to the point where it used to be. You know, years ago we used to say like, oh, you got to have estrogen low year round. But I do think in prep, when fat loss is your goal and composition, your look is your goal, I do think that keeping that estrogen under wraps is definitely super imperative. You know.
I think so. I think crushing the estrogen, it doesn't have any merit. Like completely bottoming out, I think there's no benefits. However, keeping it in range or even on the slightly lower side, especially as you get closer to a show, I think there's a lot of merit because it gives you the ability to assess your physique very, very clearly with no water present.
Yep.
So your decision making is better, whether you think, oh, actually, that's not body fat, that's water, or is it? Actually, you're still holding body fat. You need to get leaner. Get on the fucking Stairmaster. Get on the Stairmaster. Eat some fish and shut up.
Yeah.
So I do think there's definitely a point with that. So generally, when it comes to the cycles, I do prefer testosterone lower in prep and then higher in the off season. But again, that's my preference, and I don't generally see any negatives having my testosterone lower, and I don't feel like I get flatter either. I think that's a little bit of a myth where people think that they're fuller of testosterone. I don't necessarily think they're fuller. It's just that they're probably carrying more water.
Yeah. And to a degree, you're on more total hormone too. You know, if you were on, say you take your test to 1,000, I would hope, you know, that you were fuller on going on 2-3 grams versus 1.5 grams, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, but equal in that, if you put a gram of Primo in, you're going to feel a lot of fullness from that alone. So
true.
It's true. After a certain point, in my opinion, it all virtually does the same shit. This is why, Scott. This is why I do not actually put that much emphasis into the drugs, because we know what we need to know about the drugs. We know the differences between the drugs. It's not rocket science. It's nothing super complicated. It's all testosterone derivatives. It's actually super simple. Like, yes, all of these drugs do have some unique properties. I do believe that. And I do think there's very little difference, right, between them. And I do think that some people genuinely respond better to certain drugs. Like, I have clients and I've seen people respond extremely well to just Mastron. And then on the other side, I've seen people that take Mastron and they just feel like shit. So guess what?
Yeah.
Don't take Mastron. Take Primo.
Or you and EQ.
And vice versa. Yeah, or vice versa. Or you know, or if you like EQ like Scott, you take EQ. It's super simple. You
find out what works and you lean into that. When I first ran EQ, I ran it at 400. I was like, I don't really notice anything better. Like I thought this is going to be like people told me like a drier Deca, you know, and I didn't see much. But a few years later, I was like, well, what haven't I taken? I said, I only took EQ that one time, and then I ran it high. And for me, once I got that up there past like 800, that's when I said, oh yeah, this is for me. But it took that. And guess what? The opposite, man. Deca was never a thing for me. I just never felt good on it. Higher dose, I felt even worse. So I leaned away from that. That's what I think the most important things are when we try to figure out what cycle should you do. It's, well, what do you respond well to? And I think that's what I try to do, and I'm sure you do too as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
You try to figure out what works, and you lean into those things with an individual. And who knows what it's going to be, you know?
Yeah. Do you know what, Scott? I found that Deca, when I was young, I could take a boatload, and I felt great.
Really?
Now, every time I try Deca, I just get so much anxiety. I can't touch it.
Huh. No kidding.
And I find it with so many people, even as little as 100 milligrams of MPP.
Wow.
And I can already tell the mood changes. So like for me, personally, what I like the most is simple. Test Primo Mast. Like, these are the 3 compounds that I know that I get on well with, I get great results with, and guess what? 99% of people really do get on well with them with no adverse effects. And then Trenbolone, sprinkle a little bit of Trenbolone is the king, especially in prep. So I'm not opposed to a little bit of Trenbolone, but again, the dosages of it have definitely come down over the years, especially now. Like I probably think in this prep, I don't think I'll probably run more than 150, maybe 200. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see also what Dean says, but yeah, I'm definitely on the lower scale of Trenbolone now. However, I do have some guys that really do like the Tren, especially some of the European guys. But I have convinced them to take a little bit less, so that's a win.
Yeah. What do you think about, since we're on the topic, where do you stand with orals in the contest prep?
Very good question. I'm definitely not against them, but I definitely do like to use them more towards the back end of prep. Yeah. And my choice of orals would be between Anadrol, Anavar, Winstrol, and Halo. Nothing else, really. Yeah. I don't think there's any other ones that really do anything. And the choice would be between someone that gets extremely conditioned but needs more fullness. Right. Generally, Anadrol works really well. Someone that generally needs to get harder to a degree, Winstrol. And do you know what? The people that say that orals don't make a difference, they've never had a good oral. Because, let me tell you, I put 25 milligram of Winstrol in, and I can see a big visual difference in how I look across 7 days. Oh, yeah. Same with Anavar. Like, for me, Anavar, I had Anavar in, I gained 2-3 pounds of fullness instantly, and I look fuller and leaner. Yeah. So, you know, when people say orals don't work, it's like, bro, you've never had a good oral. That probably sounded a little bit wrong, saying you've never had a good oral, but
we'll use that as the sound clip for the beginning of the show, you know.
No, on a serious note, I don't think people have had good orals in that case. And again, when it comes to dosing orals, 25 milligrams, I think, is a great start point, even for someone like myself. Yeah. Just because you are bigger doesn't mean you need more drugs. So, you know, 25 milligrams I think goes a long way. And I'm not against necessarily mixing orals either. Don't get me wrong, I do think there's merit to just sticking to one oral and see what it does. But if you already know the effect that you get from these orals, I'm definitely not against mixing them.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that either.
Because like I said earlier, the drugs do have the unique properties and unique effects. So it does make sense in certain situations to capitalize on them, right?
Especially the cosmetic look at the last little bit. You know, it's not, this isn't stuff where like you're going to use the oral to look your best through summer. It's more like one day. We want you to look a certain way. And I think that you can really capitalize on. The other nice thing I think about orals is the speed in which they work. You know, if we wanted to say get a certain look with a long-acting injectable, we have to do a lot of planning, like Master on a Net. They love that, but we're not going to be making last-minute changes with it, you know?
No, I completely agree. So, and it's not just the sharpness, but it's like the instant improvement in training performance that you get is huge. Yeah. And I think... to a degree, the neurological drive that you get from them definitely has a lot of merit, especially in prep. Now, one thing that a lot of coaches and educators often overlook, for example, when it comes to Anavar, and I love Anavar personally because you can potentially safely use it from like 8 weeks out or even 10 weeks out, and I don't think Anavar would have that much of a negative impact, I'll be honest. When it comes to orals, I think that's probably the safest. But when educators say that Primo is better than Anavar for women, one small variable, and that's a little bit off topic, but still on topic of orals, so it's still classes, right? It's still useful. It's still useful. One little thing they overlook is that Primo actually has quite a long half-life. So when it comes to using Primo with females, they're not on for 6 weeks. They're on for longer than that. Yeah. For example. So I have personally seen, and that's out of experience coaching a lot of females, women do get more side effects from Primo against what a lot of educators actually claim.
Huh.
And
Is that
I
what they're
personally
saying?
think that's what they're saying. A lot of them, yeah.
Okay.
A lot of them. Yeah. In my personal opinion, it's actually Anavar that does see much less side effects. And I think the main reason for that is because it is so in and out. I mean, you don't take Anavar tomorrow, guess what? It's probably out of your system, right? You don't take
especially
Primo
at a
tomorrow.
low dose, you know?
Yeah. You don't take Primo tomorrow, it's still there probably for 10, 14 days, if not longer.
Yeah.
So there's a big, big difference, especially when, we're talking 5, max 10 milligrams. It's definitely going to have an impact between both. So if any of the female listeners are watching this and someone is telling you that take Primo, it's going to give you less sides than Anavar, I promise you, it won't. You will get more results from Primo. It's stronger, in my opinion, when it comes to building muscle, but that also comes at a higher cost. If you want less side effects, if you want something quick in and out, Anavar's probably your best bet. And this way, guess what? If you're a bikini athlete, 5 milligrams for the last 3 weeks, 6 weeks even, and you're done. Primo, if you're looking at taking Primo 5, 6 weeks, you're actually taking it for 8, 9.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't like how things are going, you can't change it tomorrow, No.
It's there. It's lingering about for a little while. So, there's a lot of merit to orals. For that reason alone, it's just so in and out. Anyway, Scott, get the questions.
It was good. Yep, we had a few questions. I closed the window, though. Don't ask me why I did that. It'll take me just a minute to get back there. I had it all prepped up and everything, and then I was like, oh, you know what? Why don't I close this window just to kind of clean things up,
What's your take on orals? What do you think to what I said?
I'm with you. I'd say for the most part, man, I totally agree. I generally keep, and I could see something like Anavar further out, 6 weeks, 8 weeks out. 10 to me would be like that outside max, but it also depends on what else we were doing. If say you had somebody who was fairly inexperienced and they were going to use test in one other compound, then I could see adding that oral in earlier versus generally I wait toward the end. I would say 4 weeks out with Winstrol, something along those lines. I would say maybe 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, or even 10 days out with Halo, depending on the case. And but I could see that changing though. Like Winstrol, maybe we don't have another DHT in there, then maybe we added it 6 weeks out. Something along those lines. But I'd say I'm pretty much across the board exactly with where you're at on that. I experimented with Super Draw for a couple seasons.
Oh, yes. Oh, mate, how can I forget Super Draw? How can I forget Super Draw? Do you know what? Good Super Draw, that shit will drive a lot of fullness.
Yeah.
It will. It will. And listen, I don't care what anyone says. I personally, when I had some real Super Draw, and I had it before a show, it was actually the night before I won my pro card. The difference in my look, the fullness was ridiculous. Ridiculous. Crazy. Yeah. Do you know what? I could have forget about that. But it's not really a compound that I would use on a regular basis. However, I do know a lot of the top guys that use Super Draw quite far out pre-workout,
It's gotten more popular in the last couple of years too. It kind of went away, and I think it's back. People will compare it to, I think a lot of times, a replacement for Anadrol. And you made a really good point. You get to a certain point where you get so freaking hard that there's no sense in using something that's going to get you harder. But maybe you could use a little bit more fullness, or the other way around. Maybe you're a guy who could use that more hardness, and that's where something like a Winstrol or Winstrol and Halo might come in. And I have no problem using Winstrol and Halo together. Obviously, just it's all about dosing too.
I definitely don't. As long as it's low doses.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, they both have different properties. With Halo, I definitely think saving it for the last little bit as a cherry on top, because for me, Halo, I do find Halo has a lot of negative sides when it comes to mental aspect with a lot of athletes.
Yeah.
I have had a lot of people get really, really down using it.
Yeah. Dude, I won't tell the story again, but
powerful, isn't it?
My first time taking Halo, this is the Cliff's Notes version of it. I was with my girlfriend after work, and I had like 2 meals left, and we're going to drive across the other side of Detroit. So this is like an hour away through Detroit and out into the suburbs. She had the directions. We printed them off for MapQuest. This is how long ago this was.
Shit.
We're supposed to be there in 45 minutes. She's going to pose with this lady. I'm going to work out at this gym. So I'm going to take my Halo right now, get in the passenger seat, and just relax in the air conditioning for the next 45 minutes, and then train. We got lost.
Chew your steering wheel off.
Oh, dude, I wanted to. Oh, it was the worst, man. It was. It was the first time I'd ever first time I took it on that particular prep. So
Practicing that self-control would have been hard that day.
I did not succeed. So here's our questions. Charles has one for us. He says, guys, do you believe the popularity of push-pull legs has caused smaller arm syndrome? Everyone prioritizes compound movements and they leave the arms to the wayside from what I see.
I think potentially if someone is programming push-pull legs poorly, then yes, it can. If someone is also executing push-pull legs poorly, yes, it can. The problem is with push-pull legs is that they are long, demanding sessions. If someone loses focus towards the end of the session and loses that intensity and treats the isolation exercise towards the end, which generally will be the arm work, like an afterthought, and they do not attack it with intent and the same intensity as they did the compound work, guess what? Your arms are not going to respond because you're not training them as hard. Yeah. So, yes, push-pull legs can cause that, but you have to remember that it's not just the split that can cause these issues. It's how you execute the split and how you design that split. Also, push-pull legs isn't just push-pull legs. It could be variation of it that can actually have a lot of merit when it comes to bringing up your arms because you get to train them more frequently, which can give you more opportunity to improve them. So I definitely disagree with that. It's more so how you apply yourself and how you structure the push-pull legs. Unfortunately, if some of the guys are not really that versed in programming, they probably aren't going to give you a split that's going to tick all these boxes. But then again, it can come down to the athlete and execution of it.
Yeah, I've got 2 things on that. One being that, so in keep in mind, because I think sometimes you see less overall arm volume, say on a push day, and compared to what you're doing with chest and maybe with shoulders. And my thought is any compound chest movement you're doing, you're hitting your triceps. Any compound shoulder movement you're doing, you're hitting your triceps, and then you're directly hitting your triceps. So there is that. And my other thought is that if you, let's say that your arms, you do have small arms, you come out of it, we 16 weeks later, your chest is bigger, your back is bigger, and your legs are bigger, but your arms aren't. We're going to have a lot easier time bringing your arms up than bringing up a back. That's for sure, man. Or bringing up some legs. So I'll take small arms and a big back,
Do you know what? I actually say this to a lot of people often is you won't lose a show based on your arm size. You will lose a show based on lack of overall size. So focus on getting big. And guess what? When you get big, you probably will have a big arm.
Yeah. They're gonna come along for the ride.
They will.
All right, we got a couple more here. Longtime listener. This is to me, I guess. He says, longtime listener, we all know that you'll love injectable Dbol, Scott. I'd love to hear your opinion on injectable versus oral. What would you compare injectable Dbol to? Cycle length, thank you. So, Kuba, I don't know if we've talked about this before, man. I have a love-hate relationship with injectable Dbol. First of all, it doesn't hit my digestive system, so it doesn't kill my appetite. Yep. Second of all, I get the instant gratification of getting an incredible freaking workout 30 minutes after I took it. But at the same time, there's some pretty nasty super solvents in there, and it still is an oral compound, so I don't want to be spending my life on that. So that's my take, man. I'm a fan, though. I love Dbol across the board, and if I could, I'd run. That'd be like all my cycles. I'd just keep running Dbol all the time, but I can't do that.
I mean, back in the day, the first few cycles that I did, I definitely did Dbol, but ever since, I definitely haven't. I think last time I tried it was many, many years ago now. Must have been like 2015 maybe.
Okay.
And it definitely wasn't the best for the old appetite. So I'm not a fan personally, because if you can't eat, you won't grow. And you can only eat what you can digest. If your digestion's shot, appetite's shot, guess what? You ain't growing, my friend.
Yeah, and even the injectable catches up with me. Maybe not quite as quick as the oral will, but eventually it catches up. But it's a hell of a ride for about 7 days. All right, so we had one more here. He says, question, when you are writing a diet, what are some of the things that you look for, things that you would like to see in the diet? I'm talking about different food sources, macros, etc., just general things that you look for.
Right, the basics. 4 different protein sources at least, which is extremely easy to hit. 4 different carbohydrate sources, again, extremely easy to hit. 4 different fruits and veggies. Now, when you think about it, it could literally be chicken, whey, eggs, beef, right?
Easy.
Super simple. Rice, potatoes, fruit, pasta.
Also easy.
Or oats. Super easy, right? You can even make it 5. Like, generally I make it 4 just for the ease of it, right? And when it comes to fruit, you can even get a bag of mixed berries that's got like 5 different berries in it. But generally, strawberry, blueberry, apple, banana, right?
Yeah.
How easy is that? Now, guess what? If you structure your diet based off a little bit of variety, making sure that each meal is a balanced meal of good quality protein, quality carb, fruit, a little bit of veg, quality fat source. And again, I did want to mention 4 fat sources as well, which would be avocado, olive oil, any nuts, and potentially even with fat sources. What else do people like the most?
I usually do, let's see, nuts, variation in nuts,
And
nut butter.
a salmon, a fatty fish.
Oh,
generally.
yeah.
A
Salmon's
salmon,
great.
You know, 100%. So when you think about it, it's extremely easy to get it really nailed, and it's extremely easy to achieve a lot of nutritional variety, which then, guess what? If you have a decent amount of variety in your food, you will be able to not only hit your macronutrient goals, which is your protein, carbs, and fats, but also your micronutrient needs, enough fiber and enough vitamins and minerals coming from actual food sources.
Yeah.
So for me, the basics would be nutritional variety and focus on getting an adequate amount of fiber. Again, not too much, not too little. I think a lot of people push for too much fiber, which then can cause issues in itself. And making sure that you at least try to make an effort to meet a lot of your micronutrient goals from your food. I personally use Chronometer, and the way I structure my clients' diets, for example, I know what I'm giving them is going to pretty much meet their micronutrient needs, because I do track through Chronometer. So I roughly know how much veg and how much fruit they need and what sort of structure with the diet they need to be able to meet that.
That's great,
So
man. That's great. And it's not being lazy on the part of the client and making sure that, because here's the other side of things is like, I'm got to prep for all these chicken meal or all these meat meals. It'd be easier to just use, a bunch of chicken breast and just call it good from there. You do pay for that in multiple ways down the road. The number one way that I think I've seen it is just in getting burnt out. 8 weeks later, 10 weeks later, it's like I can't eat chicken anymore. Or 3, 4, 5 months. I'm so sick of avocado because it's the only fat source that I've been using. You don't want to reach that spot.
Yeah, I completely agree. And do you know what? Rotating nutritional food sources, rotating different foods, you prevent from actually developing intolerance.
Yeah.
A lot of people actually develop food intolerances from eating the same foods over and over again with lack of variety in the food and lack of fiber. So generally, you see a lot of people that eat a super plain diet where they're feeding the hardcore, eating fish and rice, and they've always got gut issues. The reason why you have gut issues is because you lack nutritional variety. Like, your stomach acid is probably dead because you're not actually consuming any foods that will actually improve your gut function. No fiber, no fruit, no veg. It's terrible way to diet, really. And do you know what? I cannot think of anything more miserable than just eating plain chicken and rice. I mean, I love making, fruit, veg, mixing it all together, putting it on a pan. It tastes good, and it never feels like I'm actually dieting.
Yeah. You do great with that. You know what I've been into lately, Kuba, is I've got a mallet so that I can tenderize my chicken. And oh my God,
you're gonna
man.
You're gonna have to show me that. Send me a link.
It's so good, dude.
Send me a link.
I will. I'll send you a video of the technique. But basically, I'll pound the spices right into the meat. And then
I've got one. I've got one. I've got one.
Yeah. And then I slice it up, put it in the pan, man, and it's just it's so tender. Like because sometimes chicken, it kind of gets like more fibrous tasting, and especially if it's a day old or something, you're like, I don't want this anymore. But you can make really good food if you put some love into it. It doesn't take long.
I eat a lot of turkey breast. I'm not gonna lie. I prefer turkey.
Okay.
And what I actually do, I air fry it, and I always air fry it so it's like only just cooked, so it's super juicy.
So this is like an actual turkey breast, not like minced or anything.
I have them cut, so I do have them like cut up. And my mum actually minces my venison, so she makes me like burgers that I air fry. They're unbelievable, honestly, and zero fat in them as well.
Nice.
But with the turkey breast, what I do, once it's cooked and it's still juicy, I don't put it apart then, I put it in fridge. But then, because you still keep it intact in the breast, you can then pull it apart into the meals.
Yeah.
So I then pull it apart, and it's like almost like pulled turkey. It's nice.
Oh, that sounds really good, man. It sounds like Thanksgiving to me. We'll have that afterward for leftovers. Yeah. All right, that's all we had on questions, Kuba.
Tremendous. It's food time for me anyway, so. All
right.
Let's get the show wrapped up. Unless you've got anything else to cover.
I've got nothing else, man. We covered the diet, SLU, injectable Dbol. I'm satisfied. That's all I needed to talk about.
Next one, guys, we are going to cover the best way to actually start a prep or a diet phase. What you should do before, how to transition to it to get the best results and the best effects. So, yeah.
I love
Looking forward to it.
That'll be good, man.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. Appreciate you tuning in. If you haven't subscribed, hit the bell, all that stuff. And I'll put Kuba's Instagram and his YouTube down below. I'm sure you're already following him. But if you're not, guys, go over there. And, of course, thank you to everybody from Patreon. Throw us some Patreon questions. We'll get to those next time. And load us up here with questions, too. We've gotten so much good feedback about the show, Kuba. Guys, if you've enjoyed this, then definitely, if you're still around and you haven't hit the like button yet, then definitely do that, because it helps us out more than you know. It doesn't cost you anything. You just hit the little button. That's all I got, Kuba.
If you're still watching it and you made it to the very end, comment massive underneath. Comment massive below if you made it to the very end. Let's get it.
We'll know, you'll know, and there'll be other people that know too. That sounds perfect.
Yeah.